They demanded that he be demoted for 3 months and his pay cut from $36 a week to $25. Palmer quit his job to end the crisis with the statement that it always has been his belief that a man should do a full day's work for a full day's pay. Officials of the government-operated mines say the affair is up to the unions, unquote. Ask yourself, what will become of that young man in the future? How long will he preserve his integrity and his ambition if he knows that they will bring him punishments, not rewards? Will he continue to exercise his ability if he is to be demoted for it? This is how a nation loses the best of its men. Do you remember the scene in Atlas Shrugged when Hank Rearden finally decided to go on strike? The last straw which made the situation clear to him was James Taggart's statement that he, Rearden, would always find a way to do something, even in the face of the most irrational and impossible demands. Compare that with the following quotation in a news story of December 28, 1959, which is a statement by Michael J. Quill, head of the Transport Workers Union, commenting on a threatened city transit strike. Quote, "A lot of people are thinking we are taking this to the brink, but it so happens that every time we went to the well before, there was something there," unquote. In the closing chapters of Atlas Shrugged, I describe the labor situation of the country as follows. Quote, "Give us men." The plea began to hammer progressively louder upon the desk of the Unification Board from all parts of a country ravaged by unemployment. And neither the pleaders nor the board dared to add the dangerous words which the cry was implying. Give us men of ability. There were waiting lines years long for the jobs of janitors, greasers, porters, and busboys. There was no one to apply for the jobs of executives, managers, superintendents, engineers, unquote. An editorial in the July 29, 1963 issue of Barron's magazine mentions, quote, "the mounting scarcity of skilled labor, including, as Dr. Arthur F. Burns noted in a recent critique of official unemployment statistics, extensive shortages of scientists, teachers, engineers, doctors, nurses, typists, stenographers, automobile and TV mechanics, tailors, and domestic servants," unquote. Do you remember the story of the Minnesota harvest disaster in Atlas Shrugged? A bumper crop of wheat perished along the roadsides around the overfilled silos and grain elevators for lack of railroad freight cars, which, by government order, had been sent to carry a harvest of soybeans. The following news story is from the Chicago Sun-Times of November 2, 1962. Quote, "Illinois farm officials and grain dealers met Thursday in an effort to relieve an acute freight car shortage which is threatening Midwest bumper grain harvest. Farmers and grain dealers agreed that the shortage of railroad boxcars has become critical and saw little hope of relief for at least 2 weeks. Some grain elevator operators showed the group photographs of corn piled on the ground near elevators plugged up with corn which can be shipped. The boxcar shortage was blamed on the harvesting of 3 major crops, corn, soybeans, and milo at the same time this year. In addition, there have been heavy movements of government-owned grain," unquote. In Atlas Shrugged, Ragnar Daneskild denounced Robin Hood as the particular image of evil that he wanted to destroy in men's minds. Quote, "He is the man who became the symbol of the idea that need, not achievement, is the source of rights, that we don't have to produce, only to want, that the earned does not belong to us, but the unearned does," unquote. I shall never be able to know whether Ragnar was or was not the inspiration of an article denouncing Robin Hood, which appeared last year in a British journal called Justice of the Peace and Local Government Review, a magazine of law and police affairs. The occasion for the article was the revival of the Robin Hood Festival. Quote, having regard to the fact, said the article, that the exploits of this legendary hero were chiefly concerned with robbing the rich under the specious motive of giving to the poor, a function which in modern times has been taken over by the welfare state, it is a question of some doubt whether a Robin Hood festival is not contrary to public policy, unquote. But now we come to a composition that beats anything presented in Atlas Shrugged. I concede that I would have been unable to invent it, and that no matter how low my estimate of the altruist collectivist mentalities, and it is very low, I would not have believed this possible. It is not fiction. No fiction writer could get away with it. It is a news story which appeared on March 23rd, 1964, on the front page of the New York Times. I quote, every American should be guaranteed an adequate income as a matter of right whether he works or not. A 32-member group calling itself the Ad Hoc Committee on the Triple Revolution urged today. The three revolutions listed in their statement, which they sent to President Johnson, were the Cybernation Revolution, the Weaponry Revolution, and the Human Rights Revolution. The fundamental problem posed by the Cybernation Revolution in the United States is that it invalidates the general mechanism so far employed to undergird people's rights as consumers, the committee said. Up to this time, it continued, economic resources have been distributed on the basis of contributions to production, with machines and men competing for employment on somewhat equal terms. In the developing cybernetic system, potentially unlimited output can be achieved by systems of machines, which will require little cooperation from human beings. The continuance of the income through jobs link as the only major mechanism for distributing effective demand for granting the right to consume now acts as the main brake on the almost unlimited capacity of a cybernetic productive system. The committee urged that the link be broken by an unqualified commitment by society to provide, through its appropriate legal and governmental institutions, every individual and every family with an adequate income as a matter of right. Close quote. Here is a lesson of objectivity. Don't do that. It isn't clear whether you're approving that committee or me for denouncing it. Choose a more clear-cut passage. Now, an adequate income as a matter of right to be provided by whom? Blank out. One would expect a proclamation of this kind to be issued by a group of small-town crackpots, disassociated from reality and from any knowledge of economics. Or one would expect it to be issued by a group of rabble-rousers for the purpose of inciting the lowest elements of the population to violence against any business office that owns an electronic computer and thus deprives them of their right to consume. But such was not the case. What is frightening is that this proclamation was issued by a group of professors, economists, educators, writers, and other intellectuals, that it received front-page attention and that apparently civilized people are willing to regard it as within the bounds of civilized discussion. What is the cultural atmosphere of our day? See whether the following description fits it. I quote from Atlas Shrugged, from a passage referring to a series of accelerating disasters and catastrophes. Quote, the newspapers did not mention it. The editorials went on speaking of self-denial as the road to future progress, of self-sacrifice as the moral imperative, of greed as the enemy, of love as the solution. Their threadbare phrases as sickeningly sweet as the odor of ether in a hospital. Rumors went spreading through the country in whispers of cynical terror, yet people read the newspapers and acted as if they believed what they read, each competing with the others on who would keep most blindly silent, each pretending that he did not know what he knew, each striving to believe that the unnamed was the unreal. It was as if a volcano were cracking open, yet the people at the foot of the mountain ignored the sudden fissures, the black fumes, the boiling trickles, and went on believing that their only danger was to acknowledge the reality of these signs. Unquote. The purpose of my discussing this tonight was not to boast, nor to leave you with the impression that I possess some mystical gift of prophecy, but to demonstrate the exact opposite, that that gift is not mystical. Contrary to the prevalent views of today's alleged scholars, history is not an unintelligible chaos ruled by chance and whim. Historical trends can be predicted and changed. Men are not helpless, blind, doomed creatures carried to destruction by incomprehensible forces beyond their control. There is only one power that determines the course of history, just as it determines the course of every individual life, the power of man's rational faculty, the power of ideas. If you know a man's convictions, you can predict his actions. If you understand the dominant philosophy of a society, you can predict its course. But convictions and philosophy are matters open to man's choice. There is no fatalistic, predetermined historical necessity. Atlas Shrugged is not a prophecy of our unavoidable destruction, but a manifesto of our power to avoid it, if we choose to change our course. It is the philosophy of the mystic, altruist, collectivist axis that has brought us to our present state and is carrying us toward the finale, such as that of the society presented in Atlas Shrugged. It is only the philosophy of the reason, individualism, capitalism axis that can save us and carry us instead toward the Atlantis projected in the last 2 pages of my novel. Since men have free will, no one can predict with certainty the outcome of an ideological conflict, nor how long such a conflict will last. It is too early to tell which choice this country will make. I can say only that if part of the purpose of Atlas Shrugged was to prevent itself from becoming prophetic, there are many, many signs to indicate that it is succeeding. I thank you.